Hello everyone. Welcome again to our last session today, which is devoted on disinformation research and policy responses in the Balkans, where you will have a pleasure to have well-known keynote speakers and panelists, and will present the work we do in GATE and also in cooperation with our partners. Where they will present what are the specific in the Balkans and with such low resourced languages like Bulgarian. It's my pleasure to introduce Kalina Boncheva, who will be moderator of this session. She's leading researcher, a well-known researcher in the field. Kalina, please.
Thank you, Sylvia. It is a real pleasure to be here today. And we have a wonderful set of speakers and experts on this panel. And due to the limited amount of time we have, I will not discuss too much the problem itself. I think by now we have all become aware of the fact that disinformation and citizen susceptibility to conspiracy theories and other misinformation around COVID vaccines, for example, specifically in the area of the Balkans and Bulgaria, is some of the amongst the worst in Europe, as has been reflected in a recent study by Globsec. And the problem is made significantly worse by the fact that, as Sylvia alluded, it's a minority language, and therefore the platform content moderation algorithms are not sufficiently adapted to Bulgarian, and also the cultural and geopolitical specifics. And therefore, basically, there are deficiencies in their responses, and they're not removing that disinformation as efficient as they are for languages like English or German. And this is in order to give you a better view of this problem and the bigger context, we have this panel today. So it is my great pleasure, first of all, to introduce Veni Markovski, who is a Bulgarian internet pioneer and entrepreneur, and co-founder of the first commercial internet service provider in Bulgaria. He has published hundreds of articles in Bulgarian and international news outlets, and he served as an expert in the high-level expert group on fake news and online disinformation to the European Commission. He is now in the newly established expert group on tackling disinformation and promoting digital literacy through education and training. So without further ado, thank you, Veni. We're looking forward very much to your presentation.
Thanks, Kalina, and immediately I have to correct you. I was co-founder of the first commercial internet service provider in the capital of Bulgaria, not in Bulgaria as a whole. The first ISP in Bulgaria was in Varna, which Lexi. But I wanted to ask, to start with, if we can put the next slide, please. To start with some biographical data, but also to ask you, how do we know that I am actually Veni? I mean, there is a video, you see me, and there is somebody who says that his name is Veni. And the question is, how do we know it's me? With the new deep fake technologies, we could never be sure that whoever is talking to us is actually the person who they say they are. And if you remember one of the, or you may not remember because you may not have watched it, but in one of my favorite movies by Emir Kusturica, the great Balkan director, Time of the Gypsies, the main character says, "Since the moment I caught myself cheating, I don't believe anyone." So starting with this, the question of disinformation has been pretty much in the essence, I would say, of the Bulgarians who were born and lived under communism and the ones who are around us now. And it's true for actually all the Balkan countries and perhaps for all the countries around the world. Because, but we lived in an environment and in a society where disinformation was a governmental policy. And we have seen that times and again in everything that we've seen in the news, and to the extent that we knew as people of the quote-unquote developed socialist society, what is disinformation and how to spot it. So I think this background gives us a unique opportunity to look into the current modern trends of disinformation. And I started to be more involved with this in the last few years since the European Commission announced their first high-level expert group on fake news and disinformation online, as it was called. And by the way, in the first meeting of that group, there was a heated argument why we should not be using fake news, and it was due to the fact that the back then American president was using it in a completely different setting. Anyway, we came with a definition in 2018 that disinformation, as used in the report, includes all forms of false, inaccurate, or misleading information designed, presented, and promoted to intentionally cause public harm or for profit. Now, some of the people who are dealing with disinformation may not agree with that definition, but again, this was used for our report. And we continue to use this definition with slight updates in the current expert group, which started just a few months ago in October. We are hopeful to come with a report next year, and we know that the European Commission then will have its communication, and hopefully the platform this time around will have a better understanding of the issues that we've been trying to alert them in the first report in 2018. Back then, when we published our report, the European Commission also issued a communication, and the platforms accepted a code of good practices, which they still follow, but definitely there is a need for more. If you can put the next slide, please. Thank you. I wanted to bring a couple of examples from Bulgaria and the disinformation that we see on Facebook. And I'm focusing only on Facebook because Facebook is the widest spread social platform in Bulgaria. It has about 4 million users, 4 million people are online regularly, which is more than half the population of the whole country. And so I have two examples to give. First is, as I call it, the curious case of Donald Tusk's grandpa. A couple of years ago, when Bulgaria took over the presidency of the EU, Donald Tusk came to Bulgaria to have a speech. And he spoke in a very nice, sweet Bulgarian, touching on every little piece of the Bulgarian soul, if you will, mentioning, the ancient times, and then Hristo Stoichkov, the football player, and Boyko Borisov, the then prime minister. Basically, it was a very lovely speech, and he spoke it in a very soft Bulgarian, which he was capable of doing as he's coming from Poland, and the languages have some similarities. What happened, though, was that positive reaction to his speech online. He spoke on a Friday evening, I believe, and almost immediately, there was an article or a status rather published by some woman on Facebook, which became very popular. I mean, it was shared thousands of times. It was viewed hundreds of thousands of times, and we tried to debunk this. The status was basically claiming, "Do you know who are you praising?" His grandfather was a Nazi soldier. And there was a picture of somebody who actually looked like Donald Tusk, not like his father, a grandfather. So we did a little, within the Internet Society, we did a little research, and we found out that that's all fake news or disinformation. And we were able to find out that the original of this was a Polish politician who used this disinformation a few years ago, and then he was basically fired from his party or left his party, etc., etc. But then this information was revived by a former journalist who'd been in jail and was out of jail by that time, and was spreading it in Russian, which was translated in Bulgarian. And the problem that we saw with Facebook was when we tried to debunk this and to share the facts to the same places where Facebook has shared the disinformation, we got a warning. The people who were trying to share it, we all got warnings that we seem to be sharing the same content over and over again, and our accounts will be banned or temporarily prevented from using Facebook if we don't stop doing that. So this was the first really big warning sign that we got. And then we did a test for the hate speech in Bulgarian, and it was already mentioned in the opening of this session that that the social platforms don't understand languages which are not based on English. I would say probably not English at all. We reported within the Internet Society, within a small project, we reported a number of contents which were clearly hate speech under any European or Bulgarian standards. And we found out that about 90% of the default answers from Facebook were that the speech is okay. The statuses are okay, there is no hate speech. And only when we requested reviews, which probably went to somebody who actually spoke Bulgarian, about 80% of those reported statuses were taken down. So what we see with this, and what we later realized by a documentary that we watched on one of the European TVs, is that Facebook hired people in the Philippines through some intermediate company, and these people have 8 seconds to decide if a status is against the standards of Facebook or the community standards or not. So clearly, within 8 seconds, they can never figure out a status which is not in English. So we did also, further down the road, we did 2 projects on COVID-19 last summer, in the summer of 2020, and then from October 2020 to May 2021. And we were shocked to find out how much disinformation there is and how difficult it is actually to tackle it. We managed to reach to about 1 million Bulgarians through those 2 projects. And we managed to spread information. I'm not going to go into too much details, but I think some of the data is really interesting. So we had about 1,100,000 minutes viewed of videos that we produced. And our videos were short interviews with the leading Bulgarian experts in spreading true factual information about COVID-19 and debunking some of the false information that is being spread online. However, regardless of our efforts, the number of people vaccinated in Bulgaria is still relatively small, and many people believe all this disinformation which is being spread online. However, it's also being spent in the traditional media, TV, radio, and newspapers. And we found out that regardless of the effort that we put in combating it and tackling it in the online world, the traditional media still has a much broader audience, and it's very difficult to try to tackle it only online. We can go to the next slide, which is actually that we consider this work in progress because there is never going to be an end to tackling disinformation. Disinformation will always be with us. The only way of dealing with it is, as we are focusing in the expert group currently going on at the European Commission, is actually to reach out to the educational system and to try to start to explain to the people since they are very young, but also to their parents and their teachers, how they can spot disinformation and what is the need and how they can frame it and explain it to the kids so that they don't become victims of disinformation. Clearly, we have to use both traditional media, but also online media. And unfortunately, some of these technologies is actually developing much faster than those of us who are among the pioneers of the internet can actually adopt, if you will. Like teenagers are now using massively TikTok and other apps that most of us grown-ups are not using. So it's difficult to reach out and to make this possible. So in the next steps that we see is that we are counting on hopefully to be established in the next few days, Bulgarian government, which we see that some of the people who are the big, I would call them fact checkers, but also truth tellers, are now within the parliament. Unfortunately, they are accompanied there with some politicians and political parties which are spreading disinformation. So we'll see in this fight whether they could prevail. And this is the key point here, which is how we can motivate and how we can organize the people who are providing the factual information to actually do more, and how we can disincentivize, if you will, and make sure that when somebody says something which is factually not correct or straightforward lie, they're being confronted and challenged. And we count a lot on the associations like and organizations like the Association of European Journalists in Bulgaria and others of this kind, which have to reach out to their members and journalists and anchors, TV and radio, hosts of popular shows to be able in real time to ask the right questions to the people who are spreading disinformation. Now, this is going to be a very difficult task, and I cannot speak for other Balkan countries, but definitely for Bulgaria, because most of those people who are spreading disinformation are doing it in a way that is coming through some mainstream media channels, and we don't see an opportunity for us to actually go and tackle it and combat it on their turf, because when they fight for more viewers and more visitors, the easiest way to do it is to publish something or to say something which is outrageous and which brings people to make comments and stuff like that. And I will finish, and I want to open the floor if there are any questions from the other panelists, but also to say that, and you can put the next slide so people can have a look at my email if they have questions. But we do hope that we can have a discussion which will continue for quite a while, but we can also reach out to the media and tell them that when they open their platforms, when they put down discussions and allow people and trolls and people who spread disinformation to browse and to make comments without any control, that's actually not freedom of speech. I mean, limiting them or editing their or making a comment that, you know, whatever they're saying is not factually correct. This is not censorship, but this is actually defending the other participants, the people who want access to information, from not being able to have it. Because in a conversation online, the trolls and the people who spread disinformation are the ones who are actually the ones that are more vocal, and their voice is being more heard because they're yelling sometimes, you know, they're occupying all the space. And I want to, without revealing too much of our work within the Internet Society, I want to tell you that early next year, we're expecting to publish a report based on observations from the comments of the people who we have spotted as being trolls in the previous campaigns that we did online. And we have a couple of really good researchers getting all the data that we collected about those trolls and preparing a report that we are hopeful to publish sometime in February or March, which we were lucky to get the support of the US State Department with some small funding to help us put together a team to go through the data and figure out what actually is happening and why are there so many trolls and so many people spreading disinformation online. I will finish here. I don't know how Sylvia and others, how we proceed from now on.
Thank you, Veni. That was a really insightful talk and a great introduction and overview of the problem. As we are a bit over time at the moment, I will straight move on to our next speaker, and hopefully we have time for questions at the end. So Maria Bielikova, it is my great pleasure to introduce you, and please go ahead. We look forward very much to hearing about your work.
Thank you. Um, in this short talk or just information about AI research and on addressing disinformation in Central Europe, I will not speak about Bulgaria, but hearing Veni, we are in Slovakia and Central Europe. I mean, Czech Republic, Poland, Slovakia, post-communist countries, very, very similar to you, and almost all what helps. So I will start with, I will speak about our project SEDMO. We are hub in EDMO European initiatives, but first I will tell you a few words about my current workplace because it's somehow connected as well. Last year, we established in Slovakia Kempelen Institute of Intelligent Technologies, which is new initiatives. It's what is different. What we had before is primarily financed by private sector. We are researchers based on a university before, and what we do is doing a bridge between academia and industry, concentrating and circulating talents. And one of our quite important topics is disinformation. Actually, in KINIT, we have 5 teams at the moment, and in the topic of disinformation, these 3, as they are depicted, are involved. So we are pretty much oriented towards user modeling, web and user data, natural language processing, and what is something, at least in Slovakia, in this part of Europe, new. We have team on ethics and human values. Because all these issues are really very sensitive, doing data ethics assessments and so on. I personally, I'm in domain of personalization more than 20 years, and personalization is one of really most important factors on spreading disinformation. So I believe that we will not move to personalization of disinformation explicitly. That means that to create personalized disinfo web portals, but still we have problems with this. Continuing with the SEDMO, SEDMO is part of European Digital Media Observatory initiatives. You see Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Poland, as already mentioned. We are 8 partners. So what is quite important that besides Czech partners, the consortium is led by Charles University in Prague, KINIT, and University of Matěj Bell in University in Trnava is media partners, and we are in KINIT, we are responsible for AI-based support of fact-checking. This part is somehow distinguishing a bit our project from other hubs, because these EDMO hubs are based on fact-checking and media literacy, as these 2 activities are considered as quite important for moving forward with this problem of disinformation tackling. And we added to our project this issue, having a whole activity and some connections with other activities on AI-based support. And we added in KINIT monitoring online platforms as well. And what I want to mention here as well is that we have 2 partners outside Central Europe, which is French AFP for fact-checking, and Greek software company ATC, as we now have through them access to Truly Media, a collaborative platform for the analysis and especially the verification of digital content and disinformation that they provide together with Deutsche Welle. And we in KINIT are open in the similar way to participate in other EDMO hubs. The call is recently out in this AI-based support, because I believe that we will be stronger and we will get more power to fact checkers if we will share the knowledge and we will use the not only scientific knowledge transforming to real tools, but sharing between different hubs and collaborating. Our problems are really very similar to problems in Bulgaria, so we focus on Slavic languages for this hub, Slovak, Czech, and Polish. And what we do is doing machine learning with limited label data and trying to overcome the problem with a lack of data, having our own platform for monitoring local online sources. And to finish this presentation, a few words about independent social media audits. This part is not directly present in our SEDMO project, but we consider it as really very important to move forward this topic. Having many initiatives of European Commission like Digital Services Act, when we really need to know more about platforms, one way to do is really independent black box audits. We already did some studies in this, and this will be our next topic together with local authorities as well. I will stop here because I see that we really don't have much time, and we'll leave place for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. It's a really insightful talk, and it brings us really nicely to the problem of, how can we address this? How can we address this issue with respect to Slavic languages and multi-stakeholder approaches? We're very much looking forward to learning from your knowledge and experience in SEDMO, because you were successful in obtaining that funding before. The Gate Institute is definitely interested and has already started working on a coalition of partners in the Balkans to try and emulate that success and create a similar center here in Bulgaria. We'll see whether we're successful or not, but of course there is a lot of scope for collaboration amongst all the organizations that are represented on today's panel, as well as many others that are working in that area in Bulgaria. So speaking of which, it's my great pleasure to introduce Katarina Klingova from GlobSec, where she's a senior research fellow of the Center for Democracy and Resilience. And without further ado, Katarina, we look very much forward to hearing about your work in the area.
Thank you very much, Kalina, for the invitation and a really nice introduction. Thank you very much for the organizers for the opportunity to be here and share our research. Yes, I have a slide presentation. So I'll be talking about the vulnerabilities in Balkan countries. Next slide, please. Our data comes from the fact that since 2015, we've been analyzing disinformation and information operations in the region. We've been conducting public opinion polls, very specific public opinion polls since 2016, which were titled GlobSec Trends. We conduct focus group discussions, and a few weeks ago, we published a new report, a big report called GlobSec Vulnerability Index. Next slide, please. When it comes to GlobeSec trends and GlobeSec vulnerability index, we've looked into 8 countries, in particular Bulgaria, Czechia, Hungary, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Romania, Serbia, and Slovakia. And we looked into sociopolitical vulnerabilities within these countries and how they are being utilized by foreign malign actors, in particularly Kremlin and Beijing. So how our own vulnerabilities are being utilized against us. We analyze these vulnerabilities in 5 dimensions: public attitudes, political landscape, public administration, information landscape, and civic and academic space. We try to measure these vulnerabilities on a scale from 0 to 100, where 0 presented resilience and 100 presented the vulnerability. Next slide. As you can see on this map, the most resilient countries, according to our index, are Czech Republic and Romania, closely followed by Slovakia. On the other side of the spectrum of the vulnerability is Serbia. And in general, we see that there's a big difference between the European countries and Western Balkan countries, with Hungary being an outlier and scoring similarly to Montenegro. If you're interested in the data, and if you want to read a lot of country chat, please go to the website vulnerabilityindex.org, and you can explore all our findings. You can compare the countries according to various dimensions, and you can read and download the country reports, the comparative reports, but also recommendations of what could be done and how to increase resilience in these countries, developed by us and our partners in particular countries. Next slide, please. So what did we find out? We found out that in all of the countries, it is the public attitudes that are either the most important or most vulnerable point of vulnerability, or the second most point of vulnerability. A lot of people believe in various conspiracy theories. There is a widespread distrust in how the system and democracy works. There's a widespread distrust in the system. When it comes to political leadership, they're very much pro-European oriented once they're in the government. However, in Western Balkan countries, more and more people are sympathetic to cooperation with Russia and China, and the narratives about the European Union, but also about Russia and China, very much change once the politicians or political parties are part of the opposition, leave the government, and we see that people are becoming more and more critical towards the Euro-Atlantic orientation or Euro-Atlantic entities, and they are much more open and positively talk about Russia and take over a lot of disinformation narratives. When it comes to public administration, we found out there is a widespread low situational awareness. There are in the whole region, but especially in Western Balkan countries, there's not many people that eventually understand the concept of information operation hybrid threats. There are no capacities of public institutions that deal with these projects. Outdated legislation is widespread. This legislation often doesn't cover online environment, and it is a huge problem. Next slide, please. When it comes to the information space, and this is something that already Veni pointed out, we found out that more and more disinformation has become a part of a public discourse because of the fact that more and more politicians are actively using disinformation and conspiracy theories in order to lure some of the voters and some of the societal groups. And that's problematic because, more and more mainstream media is actively then spreading disinformation. We also found out that the presence of disinformation correlates with the presence of influence of pro-Kremlin actors. And really, a lot of people believe in various conspiracy theories. In many countries, especially in Western Balkan countries, there are attempts to state capture media, public broadcasters, and that has a huge impact on the perception of independence of media and the work. When it comes to civil society, there's a huge polarization. A lot of civil societies are demonetized and witch hunted, especially if they promote particular liberal policies. In many countries, government organized or government-controlled non-governmental institutions or think tanks are being established, which then peddle further many pro-governmental narratives or disinformations. And there's an increasing restriction in academic space. Orthodox Church plays an important role when it comes to promotion of pro-government narratives and conducting a lot of smear campaigns against liberal policies and promoting traditional values, which to a certain level is understandable, but then you know, a lot of people believe in conspiracy theories. Next slide, please. This is just more granular data when it comes to the public attitudes. As you can see, the most vulnerable are Serbians, closely followed by Bulgarians, Montenegrins, and North Macedonians. Next slide, please. And when we look more into closely, we see there's a big difference in how countries perceived a threat. Whom do they perceive as a threat, as a friend, and whom as a foe? In Western Balkan countries, it is the United States that are perceived as a threat for the countries. Next slide, please. Another thing that we found out is that there's a widespread lack of understanding of China's activities in the region, and understanding of you know, what kind of threat they could pose in future for their country. Czechia was the only country where majority of the respondents perceived China as a threat. In Bulgaria, 3% perceive China as a threat. As you can see from the chart, 84% in Serbia do not perceive China as a threat. Next slide, please. With COVID-19, we saw that China especially was very good in and very successful in image projection of how they contribute, how they help countries in the region. Especially they were successful in the Western Balkan countries, as you can see on the chart, where more or in case of Serbia, majority of respondents thought that China, not the EU, eventually handled the COVID-19 pandemic better. And this is something that they were very successful in. Next slide, please. And this is closely connected to the spread of various conspiracy theories in the region connected to COVID. This chart is an average of various conspiracy and disinformation theories, questions we polled in all the countries, and as we can see once again that the Western Balkan countries are more susceptible to conspiracy theories. More respondents believe in them. That makes them more vulnerable. Next slide, please. With this, I mean, it's very important, and what is a bit of a worrying trend is that due to the image projection, due to the conspiracy theories that are being actively spread, more and more people in Central and Eastern Europe are thinking or considering of Chinese regime as an inspiration for their country, which is a bit worrying because they really do not really uphold the human rights and some of the liberal principles. Of course, there are big differences, but 30% in Romania, 25% in Bulgaria are already for such ideas. Next slide, please. And this is closely connected with another warning sign that we observed, that increasing more respondents in Central and Eastern Europe are openly supporting the autocratic leadership. On this chart, you can see that in 5 out of 6 countries, we did the polling in the support for strong autocratic leader who doesn't have to bother with parliament or election has increased. Within 5 months, we did the pollings in between in some countries significantly. And once again, Bulgaria, Romania are leading such in the region. Next slide, please. But what can we do about it? And this is something that already my former speakers, pointed it out. We need to be much more present in the region. Russia and China are just filling the void of lack of communication, lack of information of what are the public institutions or what are the institutions, European Union and NATO doing. So we really need to work and improve our PR and our strategic communication. We need to raise awareness and we need to build awareness of public servants, but also of the teachers who then spread a lot of conspiracy theories or disinformation towards their students. We need to openly talk about the activities of Russia and China in the region. Next slide, please, because they're still not a part of the public debate. We need to really push on the social media platforms to adhere to their own rules and transparency measures, even in such a small countries as we are, because democracies in our countries matter similarly as they matter in bigger countries as the United States or France. And we need to demonetize disinformation, because a lot of people are making a lot of money by spreading conspiracy theories. So this is all from me. Thank you very much for your attention. There's my email. You can write me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katarina. That was a really insightful talk and helped us to understand the citizen perspective of the problem and why it's so important to be addressed. So it is my great pleasure now to move on to the presentation by Ralica Kovacheva, who is an associate professor at Sofia University. And since May 2021, she has been the editor-in-chief of the only platform in Bulgaria dedicated solely to fact-checking. And this is Fact Check BG. So we're very much looking forward to finding out more about this really important effort in that space. Thank you, Ralica. Over to you.
Thank you, Kalina. Thank you all for having me here. I think I will follow the lead of the previous speakers and add some practical insights to this, I think, very thoughtful and very deep observations, and very rightful also, stated by the previous presentations. This is how our website looks in Bulgarian and in English. This is a slightly different version because not all of our texts have been translated yet in English. We are operational only since the end of May this year. That's around 6 months now. So we are a very young project. Fact Check BG is an initiative of the Association of Europeans in Bulgaria. Our goal is to we don't pretend that we could do all the job needed here, but we would like to motivate our colleagues, journalists, citizens themselves to engage with fact-checking themselves. To that end, what we do is, first of all, fact-checking. This is our main and routine job every day. That means specific claim is fact-checked and a clear verdict is pronounced. The second activity is debunking. This is a more deeper research in a longer time frame on how disinformation narratives appear and disseminate. I will present you some examples later. And the next thing is pre-bunking. This is kind of a new activity, especially here in Bulgaria. That means we collect the facts on some complicated topics and provide these facts before the disinformation proliferates. We kind of want to predict where it is possible to have a disinformation wave and focus our efforts there. A few words about pre-bunking. This is disinformation, anti-disinformation vaccine. It's needed to provide the facts, to alarm, to warn the public where is disinformation is possible to appear, and then to wrap up again with the facts in order to put the focus on the correct facts and not on the disinformation. We have a section called the facts about. This is mainly the pre-bunking section on our website. We deal with issues like EU green certificate, of course, COVID-19 and COVID vaccines, the Green Pact, the European Green Pact, the EU foreign policy, human rights, and things like that. As you see, mostly big, important EU issues, because we think, as previous speakers said, we have to teach people to understand better how the EU is functioning. People here do not understand this. So they are very vulnerable to these disinformation messages, especially we saw them during the 3 election campaigns we had this year, that the EU is kind of, it is dictating something, and it is, of course, bad for Bulgaria to follow and to be a member of the Union in general. Disinformation debunking. We have some very good research efforts here on, of course, COVID disinformation, anti-EU and anti-NATO propaganda on the Bulgarian online media and social media. And we could see now, based on our research, that profiles and groups that spread this kind of disinformation are connected. The same profiles or groups share anti-EU disinformation and also anti-vaccine disinformation. So it is possible, especially for some institutions with these resources, to follow not only the narratives as we do, but to follow the money. And of course, fact checks. Most of our articles are examples of fact checks. 2 examples here. One of the latest: no, vaccines do not increase the risk of spreading serious illness or death to the unvaccinated. For example, you know, this is very, very popular in Bulgaria. Something on how we work. Our methodology follows the IFCN principles, the International Fact-Checking Network. Everything is very clearly and in a very detailed manner described on our website. So the audience could read this and could judge by itself if to trust us or not. But these principles concern impartiality and integrity, editorial independence, transparency of methodology. For example, how do we select what claims to check, or how we select sources to base our checks on, and things like that. The type of verdicts, if something is true or not true, or partially true, or is not checkable because it's not fact-based. We have a clear communication with readers and correction policy. So if a correction is needed to be made in our articles, it is described in detail in the article. We do not change the article without explaining to our readers why this is changed or something has been added to it. And of course, transparency of funding. As you know, non-government organizations in Bulgaria and in the region are kind of suspected for working for foreign interests, foreign agencies, foreign countries. This is very, our narrative. We have been called Sorosoids or traitors and things like that. So we provide a detailed explanation of our funding. We are funded by grants, so our readers could read it and know who is paying for our job, and if our job is influenced by the sponsors. It is very easy to spot if you read our text. What we have done, we have over 80 articles for this 6 months, which is a very good average rate. We have also a deep Facebook page reach and 2 followers, 1 letter from a reader per week, which I think is very good. Recently, we hired, engaged with our work 2 high school students in order to be able to go on TikTok, for example, so to find and address disinformation proliferating there among the young people. Most pressing challenges ahead. I think the first one is to build a community of experts, journalists, and influencers, because we are very, very motivated but very small team, and job is to enhance this practice, this fact-checking practice, and to make it sound and look routine to Bulgarian media. So we would like to add more journalists to our community and to work with more media, of course. Also with more experts, because we always need experts in order to check and to verify some information in Bulgarian media or online on social media. Something that would be very, very, very important, but I'm afraid it's kind of impossible. It's to break Facebook echo chamber and filter bubbles, because now people who read us are people very similar like us, educated people, media literate people, but not the people who really, really need the correct facts and disinformation debunking. And also we need to de-COVID the content and engage more with local political fact-checking. The reasons have been very clearly stated by Veni, so I only could support him in this. And where you could find us on our website, of course, on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ralica. It's really exciting to see how we have a wonderful new fact-checking initiative evolving and hopefully thriving in the future in Bulgaria. Because when we first got to know each other and discuss collaborations and joint work research, that was back about a year ago. At that time, there were actually no fact-checkers in Bulgaria. And it is great to see that things are finally moving in the right direction. And thank you really so much for taking the lead in that effort. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce Milena Dobreva, who is a senior researcher at the Gate Institute, and we'll discuss what are the kinds of challenges that we have addressed with trying to continue starting from debunks and trying to build some technology to assist fact checkers and other stakeholders fighting disinformation in Bulgaria. Thank you, Milena. Over to you.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm sorry, my voice is a bit breaking, but I hope that you will hear me well enough. I'm presenting on behalf of myself and also Irina Temnikova, who is an experienced researcher with us, and our 3 student interns, Silvia Gargova, Christiana Krsteva, and Ivo Džumerov. We are very privileged to work with young people and to get them engaged in this topic. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So I have 3 main topics in my presentation. The first one is to give a little bit more of a background on the topic. The second is to give a bird's eye view on what we have done in the last few months, and then to discuss what we plan to do in the future. So to add to some of the notes we already heard from our previous speakers, Bulgaria is also ranked very low in the European Media Literacy Index for 2021. We heard that we are among the countries with relatively higher vulnerability from Katarina. And although we are very happy to have our first national fact checker, we also heard from them. Actually, we have quite low visibility. For example, when we check aggregations of fact checks on COVID, which, for example, the Pointer Institute is doing, there are only 6 related to Bulgaria from over 9,000 fact checks, and actually they don't come from our national sources. Every fact check which is related to Bulgaria comes from an international player in the field. So there is more which can be done there. Next slide, please. One of the negative cultural things we contributed to the topic is the term cyber balkanization, which is seen as these little turf wars between many small groups which have similar perspectives, but also a narrow-minded approach. In a way, we all suffer from this quite visibly when one explores what is happening in our media and social media. And I only wanted to give one small example with an image. We all know that images are supposed to be better than 1,000 words, but this one is clearly confusing. I'll translate the Bulgarian equivalent to a vaccine which says onion or garlic for our international viewers. But if we look at the connection between the country flags and the vaccines, it's totally misleading whether this is who created the vaccine or the most popular vaccine in those countries. So this is just one local example which brings several issues at once. Next slide, please. So motivated by this situation, we started working with our little team, and obviously there is a lot going on internationally, and we can see a paradox. We have some excellent Bulgarian institutions which participate in the creation of tools which help to identify disinformation in English, but they still haven't done this for Bulgarian. We cannot just take something which works for another language and apply it to Bulgarian. And as Professor Ilieva mentioned, introducing this topic, we actually look at how low-resourced languages can advance in this domain. Bulgarian is, of course, our priority. Next slide, please. What is our ambition? So we want to develop tools which will support the disinformation detection for Bulgaria, and we seek to have societal impact on a range of stakeholders, with our final goal obviously being serving the citizens most. What do we need to achieve this ambition? Well, we need data sets, instruments, and models. Next slide, please. And we started collecting them. We have done work with 2 data sets, one which has 52,000 tweets. I'm not going to discuss this in detail because you will see more details in the video which will be played after our session. Another interesting thing we did is to extract some disinformation posts from Facebook in Bulgarian, and to do some experiments with how we can annotate them, following the annotations of the first draft report, which is quite famous to everyone who is in this domain. Next slide, please. So the annotation exercise, sorry, I stepped ahead. As a sideline, we discovered that when one searches for well-curated data sets, they're actually not necessarily well described. So one of our outcomes is a model we propose to characterize data sets so that researchers can discover them better and see how they're similar or different. Next slide, please. In our classification experiment, we took groups of equal sizes in 4 categories according to the first draft categories. And we asked people to annotate them. These were not random people. They were early stage researchers and librarians. Next slide, please. So we had these 4 groups with equal number of posts in them. Plus, we allowed people to add another category. As you can see from the diagram, the various groups don't show actually no group classified these posts in the same way we did. Next slide, please. And this little experiment also confirms that the most, how to say, diversion is that people see as conspiracy theory content many of the posts which actually relate to other topics. Next slide, please. We also organized some educational events. So we had a very successful summer school, lots of happy faces here, and we did some professional training for librarians, which confirmed the big need to have more educational programs offered to different types of stakeholders. Next slide, please. And we arrived to our future plans. So we started collecting and curating data sets. We started experimenting with various tools, and we also started offering some educational programs. I will second Benny and will say that in my personal opinion, the education is the big answer. Whatever tools we have, we need educated people who would know how to use these tools and also how to reason. UNESCO does quite a lot of work in this domain, so maybe we can look at what they offer as a curriculum, which is not really adopted in Bulgaria. And in the next year, we will consolidate these different components and look more into the impact of misinformation and disinformation on various, to support various stakeholders and also the citizens. So next slide, please. This research is part of the intelligent government. So here you see more people and 2 topics which actually can learn from each other. And this is my final slide. There is more we will be able to share in the next year. I'm giving the floor back to Kalina to close this session.
Thank you very much, Milena. That was a really insightful presentation. So, as you said, we would like to next invite you to get some more details on this work in the videos that will follow. Due to the fact that we've run out of time, I think the best way forward is for me to say thank you very much for all the speakers. I have many questions, but I think what we can say for sure is that where we were last year when we did this a similar panel exactly 1 year ago, the situation was not as far evolved as it is now. There weren't so many people who have progressed so much in the area of working on countering disinformation in Bulgarian. So on a personal level, I think I'm very hopeful that once we meet again in a year's time from now, there'll be even more exciting results to show. So thank you very much. Let's all keep in touch and collaborate around this important topic and try to amplify each other's efforts to the best effect. So have a lovely day and thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Kalina, and all the participants. Thank you, Veni, and all the participants in this session. So we came to the end of our conference today. I would like to thank you all for being part of GATE event. Many special gratitude to all the moderators, the keynote speakers, the panelists, and for the interesting insights they presented, for the inspiring discussions. In all the sessions, we discussed our vision, the future, the challenges, and we're looking for next year for our event to see where we are and what we'll achieve during this period. And I hope you enjoyed the second GATE event, Big Data and AI Forum, and it will lay the foundation for many valuable research collaborations and partnerships. So follow us on our website, on the social media for next events dedicated to the specific research topics we are working on. So stay safe and enjoy the coming holidays. Goodbye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Milena Dobreva. I am an associate professor and an experienced researcher at GATE Institute. And today I will introduce for all of you the research topic of disinformation. We are still quite young in this area. Actually, our institute is still quite young, but this is the last addition to our research domains and to our flagship projects. In this area, we started building our team and expanding it this year. This is the summer of 2021. And I have the pleasure to work with lovely young people, Dr. Irina Temnikova, and our student interns, Sylvia Gargova, Christiana Nikolaeva, and Ivo Jumerov. You will hear all of them a little bit later on this topic. My task is to introduce what we are trying to achieve in this area. As everyone follows what's happening around, this topic became quite crucial in our everyday lives today, and we speak not only currently about the pandemic of COVID, but also about the pandemic of disinformation, which comes on various topics which are very important for our lives. There are plenty of researchers who are trying to build tools which help to discover and to stop the spread of disinformation. And these tools are working for other languages. Of course, there is a lot of work done on English, but currently we don't have very good instruments which would help to analyze social media content and media content in Bulgarian and discover potential sources of incorrect information. So our little team is working in this area, and we need to do quite a lot of different pieces of work in order to be successful. First of all, we need to extract our data, to clean them, because every time you extract data, you need to make sure that what you're processing actually is correct. And you will hear about this from Sylvia and from Ivo. Then we are starting with an analysis of the language of the content, and this is the work which Christiana is doing. And finally, we do a transition to building automated tools for classifying social media content, and you will hear more about this from Irina Temnikova.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Gargova and I'm studying artificial intelligence at Sofia University. I'm one of the scholars from the DeepMind Scholarship Program. Here at GATE, I'm part of the Disinformation Research Group. We study the spread of disinformation in social media platforms used in Bulgaria. What I'm working on is data extraction and cleaning. We collect data from two social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. We use CrowdTangle to gather posts from Facebook. The posts come from Bulgarian public groups and pages with keywords COVID-19 and vaccine in Bulgarian language. The period is from September 2020 to March 2021. We created a small data set of 1,200 posts and then we annotated it by category. Annotation is the activity where we assign posts to different categories. For example, posts discussing the freedoms of the citizens or posts suggesting there is a conspiracy theory at work. These annotations are done by humans and then can help later to train algorithms in classifying posts. The posts from Twitter were extracted with the Twitter API. We used the keywords vaccine and vaccines in Bulgarian. The period is from May 2020 to March 2021. Currently we have a dataset of almost 53,000 tweets. This was surprising because Facebook is a lot more popular than Twitter in Bulgaria. We started to explore the data and selected a subset of 3,000 tweets, which were analyzed by Ivo and Christiana, who explored what is most interesting about the content and the language. This detailed work helps to understand better the data we're dealing with. We use human analysis and a combination of automated and manual processing to identify posts in other languages using the Cyrillic alphabet. A challenge we ran into was that some of the posts were not available in the time of analysis, but were there when we harvested them. This may be because the user restricted the content or because it was deleted or banned by the platform. Even some of the links mentioned in the posts do not exist anymore. Another challenge is the language identification in the dataset from Twitter. At first glance, it's noticeable that there are messages in other languages, like Macedonian or Russian. We tried different language identification tools, and although their accuracy is quite high, over 90%, we still have to check for errors manually. Our work will support natural language processing research on Bulgarian language. Bulgarian is not generally the focus of NLP, however, the community will benefit if more datasets were available for training and evaluation, as currently there is only one. We will be sharing our datasets with everyone else interested to apply different analytic techniques.
Hi, I'm Ivo and I'm studying Bulgarian philology at the University of Plovdiv. I'm an intern at the Gate Institute, and at the moment I'm working in the research area of disinformation in social media. We are studying the spread of disinformation in some of the social media platforms used in Bulgaria, and we are trying to find some patterns and to create models. In my work, I use my expertise in linguistics to detect the language of disinformation and clickbait. Also, being a native speaker, I use my knowledge to detect and manually annotate messages written in Bulgarian. Till now, we have annotated a subset of 3,000 messages out of more than 52,000. Furthermore, we have found a cluster of websites, about 50, built and designed for one and only purpose, clickbait. During the process, I have faced a couple of challenges. First, about 4% of all the annotated messages on Twitter lead to web pages which do not offer any content. These are potential clickbaits, as you can imagine, and we needed to manually follow each link from each message. Second, about 20% of our batch of messages is in a language different from the Bulgarian. For example, Macedonian, Russian, Mongolian, Tajik, and several other languages. In order to solve the problems I have faced, I have used manually processing and making observations on the language used in the messages. In my opinion, our most important results are the following. First, as Sylvia has already said, our work will support machine learning and natural language processing research on the Bulgarian language. In addition, a list of suspicious clickbait websites has been made and could be added to a bigger data set in the future. And finally, we have identified some of the main characteristics of the clickbait messages. And to sum up, I believe that we have done well and have contributed to the development of NLP research on the Bulgarian language. I am grateful to the GATE Institute for giving me the opportunity to participate in the project, and I would like to thank all the members of the team for the help they are providing me with. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, I'm Christiana and I'm an intern at the GATE Institute in Sofia. My current role is to support the team of Milena Dobreva, Sylvia Gargova, Irina Temnikova, and Ivo Jumerov with linguistic research. As someone involved in fundamental linguistics, my main goal is to find and define the systematic differences of Bulgarian for fake information in comparison to other languages for fake information, like English, for example. This is important for further research as it gives us the basic language-specific knowledge we need to make our automatic tools more precise in the recognition of fake news. So what we've done so far in terms of the methods and the results we've achieved is an analysis of 3,000 tweets that we modeled and later on applied the model to a bigger corpus of 52,000 tweets. I'm also working on a bag of words model in deep syntax on the whole corpus. Although these results aren't final, we have strong ground to think that Bulgarian for fake information is more complex than English for fake information in at least 3 areas. More complex phrases with emotional words, deeper syntax in the verbal phrase, and more adverbials. So it's also important to talk about the problems and the setbacks that we've encountered. Bulgarian is a low resource language in terms of the fact that there are few respondents that speak it, 6.8 million people around the globe. Bulgarian hasn't been worked on systematically in terms of the language of fake information. Other languages that use the Cyrillic alphabet are also posing a problem for us because Twitter or Facebook or other social media platforms don't really differentiate between the different languages that use Cyrillic alphabet. So there are also insufficient number of resources for models like the bag of words model, for example, especially in terms of stop words. So we also need to work on that to further clarify these lists and to make them more functional. Thank you very much for your time. And if you are interested in our work, come join our team.
Hello, my name is Irina Temnikova, and I'm an experienced researcher at the GATE Institute. I also work on disinformation detection, as my other colleagues are doing. Let me tell you about what is my work on. I'm basically the last step after everything which my colleagues have done, and specifically, I use natural language processing, machine learning techniques, which are enriched with psycholinguistic knowledge, linguistic knowledge, and real-world knowledge. What I use these knowledges for? I do the following tasks. I work on detecting deliberate disinformation, recognizing fake texts, and creating automatic ways to find online evidence and fact-checking. There's some challenges which we as a team and me personally are facing. Let me tell you about them. The first challenge is that disinformation is a specific term, and it means the deliberate spread of fake information. We have to detect its intent, not only its fakeness. Another problem is that many methods verify the text by comparing them with official media, but often the media are biased or they can be wrong. Also, another problem is that their natural language processing work on Bulgarian, but there are no natural language processing tools for processing social media for Bulgarian. So we have to develop such tools or adapt existing ones. Why is this done? Because the social media has a different language from the one used for the other tools which are already developed. Specifically, the other tools are trained on literature or news articles which have fluent texts, no orthographic errors, while social media, as we know, is written in a very broken language, broken syntax. There are specific terms, part of the internet slang, and for this reason we basically need specific tools. What successes we have achieved until now? First of all, I'm very happy that I can finally work on Bulgarian language. This is very intuitive and relevant to me, and thus I can find easy solutions and spot the problems. Another success which we had was to actually organize a very nice summer school, which we organized in July this year. It was done by an interdisciplinary team of researchers, including me, and also the students who are coming from these different disciplines. The summer school was exactly on detecting disinformation in social media and also in the official media. Another success which we had was that we have identified various language identification tools for Bulgarian social media, and we have identified the best one. We did this with Sylvia and Ivo, and they will probably talk about this. I have also identified some other natural language processing tools for Bulgarian, and we are testing them, for example, part of speech tagger. I have also found some interesting solutions to fact-check using information beyond using official media, and I have also discovered interesting solutions to recognize deliberate disinformation, yet its intent. In summary, my research is actually quite interesting because I work on a language which is native to me and in a reality which is very relevant to my life. And also we have achieved nice successes, we have identified tools, we have developed resources, and we also are looking forward to actually work on some more interesting research. My next steps are thus to actually use the dataset which my colleagues have collected and run classifiers on it. By running classifiers, I'm planning to actually identify which are the topics which occur in this dataset. We also want to analyze the dataset for deliberate disinformation, collect large datasets on important topics for the Bulgarian society, and work on solutions for example, for cross-lingual fact-checking. I also have many other interesting tasks in mind, but I will not talk about all of them right now. If you feel interested in what we are doing, you can follow our website, our publications, or you can come to work with us.
So after listening to my colleagues, you now have an idea about the various aspects of our work. As I already said, our team is still quite young, but we will continue working, and you will hear more about this in the future. Stay tuned, join us in our events. We also organize periodically some training events. In the last year, we had a very successful summer school which attracted early stage researchers and librarians. We also did some specialized sessions to train librarians. So we will continue doing all this, and if you're interested in this topic, get in touch with us. We also look for other people to work with, so you're welcome to join us.